Hello, I'm James Lucarelli, and welcome to the very first Filmtools and RED's Prep to Set. We're doing our best social distancing and staying inside and trying to flatten out that curve. And today's session, we're going to learn a little bit more about how both the RED offerings from our current lineup and all of the great value and offerings that Filmtools does offer can come together and provide this great co-stream for you here, so we can learn a little bit more about RED and also maybe prepare a little bit to get back out there on set once we get that final go-ahead to get back out there. I know I'm excited. Now, I do want to point out that I have some associates that are monitoring the chat, both from Filmtools and from RED. So if anyone has any comments during the stream, please feel free to type in your question into the comment section, and my associates will monitor those and elevate them up to me. And if they're relevant for what we're doing, we'll go ahead and handle them live in the stream. Now, before we get into it, I do want to point out that I have a DSMC2 Monstro to my right. The camera that's filming me live is a DSMC2 Gemini, and really we'll talk a little bit more about DSMC2, our all-in-one Ranger body, and maybe what's the best configuration for you. So without further ado, I try to keep these around 30 minutes or less, so let's go ahead and dive right into it. Now, right off the bat, you should be seeing my desktop, and you'll see the RED Solitary series, which is very close to my heart, and it's our current online education that's completely free, and it's being brought to you by RED. And if you click this little watch now, you can go back and see any of the previous 6 episodes that both myself and my associate Jonathan Petz have been doing, and really these are a great place to come back and learn at your own pace. Now, before we jump right into RED, I think it's great to understand a little bit of a history of RED, understand where we came from, and then we'll be able to talk a little bit more and know a little bit more about the complete offerings. Now, I want to point out this is our very first RED camera, and it was the RED 1 that came out back in 2006 and 7, and essentially this was our very first 4K camera, and we were the first 4K camera, and you can see our cameras right here and our evolutions of our sensors right here. And this was a 4K camera that was shooting 16-bit RAW up to 30 frames per second. Now that was back in 2007, and I know there's some cameras today in 2020 that are just now shooting 4.5K, right around 30 frames per second, and we're doing all that 16-bit RAW. Now notice as we evolved from this all-in-one body that, let's face it, had its limitations, we then went into our more modular body, or our very first attempt at a DSMC, or digital still motion camera. Now the camera got a lot smaller, it got a lot lighter. We learned from I/O pains, or in and out, different things that worked and didn't work. And notice we moved our LEMO ports right up here to the front, and then we also had our fixed I/O in the back. And if anyone worked with this system, it did get a little bit cramped in the architecture in the back when you were trying to get to your I/O. So know what we did with our DSMC2, or our current modular system here. Notice that we removed those fixed I/O points. We now have fully modular interchangeable plates, and we replaced some of those LEMO connections with pogo pins, so you can essentially do either cableless monitors or move your monitor wherever you want. This is a very, very popular configuration. Why? Because I can keep this camera very, very small, or build it up large so I can have a nice on-set body that has multiple camera operators and assistants, all with their various tasks on the camera. Now this is our all-in-one Ranger body, and we'll talk a little bit more about that, but these 2 cameras are our current offerings right now, and really the benefit here is you can essentially pick your camera and then pick your sensor. Now both of these cameras have the same horsepower, the same physical capabilities when it comes to frame rates and resolutions, and really that's very helpful towards the later portion of this class. We'll talk about that, and we can talk about how we can build a preset where we can essentially build it on one and carry it over to the other camera system. Now let's go ahead and show our current sensors right here, and you'll notice right off the bat that we have 3 Super 35, or slightly larger than your 3-perf Super 35 film stock, and these are all roughly right around 33, 34, 36 millimeters and change if you looked at the diagonal for these Super 35 sensors. And if you did want to work with our Monstro VV or full frame sensor, notice that this is a our full frame sensor, but you can also shoot Super 35 if you did want to go down to 6K. So that really shows the flexibility of our modular system. And you might look at an image like this and see, wow, you guys have 4 cameras. They're not 4 cameras, it's the same camera with 4 different sensors. It essentially allows you to pick your modular body and then pick the film stock that works for you. Now, when I talk about resolution, it's always good to look at a chart like this. Why? Because I can clearly see there's the 8K, 6K, 5K, 4K, all of the motion equivalents that we like to talk about. And really, when I say 8K, 6K, 5K, 4K, all I'm really talking about is the longest edge, right? 8192 or 6144 or 4096. And really, I think that can be a little misleading, and I like to look at the megapixels, essentially the length times the width. And if you notice, 4K is right around 8 megapixels, 6K is right around 19 megapixels, and 8K is right around 35 megapixels. So I know what you're thinking. If my canvas or my resolution is growing 2 and 4 times the size, your files have to grow 2 or 4 times the size, and really, that's not the case with RED. RED, and because of RED code, it allows us to essentially shoot 8K at a compression with our visually lossless wavelet compression, and this is a great representation where you can see that. 8K uncompressed, which is, we get asked about a lot, can lead to unmanageable file sizes, and you can see that here. 8K uncompressed is around 5,000 megabytes per second. You'll fill up your half a terabyte card in less than 2 minutes. I don't think anyone wants to change out their mags every 2 minutes. Now, if you went to, maybe we're doing this feature right here, and I want to do this for a studio, or maybe this is a superhero movie and I need to paint battle armor on this cowboy so he can fight off the aliens that are coming in. Yeah, do it at 5:1. That's our lowest compression and the highest quality that you can get out of the RED camera. But still note, my data rate's only 260 megabytes per second, and maybe we're not doing VFX for a big studio, so maybe I shoot 8:1, which is a good streaming sweet spot, and that's actually what Netflix recommends. Notice my data rate is now 160 megabytes when it was 260 a second ago, and using RED code we can get it even smaller. Now, I know what you might be thinking. Going down in your data rate must mean you're losing quality, and that's not the case with RED, because remember, RED uses RED code, which is our visually lossless wavelet form of compression. It is 16-bit raw, so it's not that 8-bit, 10-bit, 12-bit posterizing effect that you can see with some of those other cameras raw. Why? Because if you want to see the math behind it, we're doing 281 trillion possible tones per channel, while they're doing billions and millions. Now, once again, I think we all want to come back to file size, but if I wanted to show something neutral like this, here's my Dragon camera, or our 6K, any of our 6K cameras. Notice I'm shooting at that Netflix level of streaming quality. I'm only at 120 megabytes per second. You could go up to our Ranger, our Monstro, or our 8K sensors, and even if I crank that down to that low compression, I'm still only in the 216 megabytes per second compared to all of those other cameras that are doing mid 200s, 300s, maybe up to 500 megabytes per second. And that's where I'll point out, yep, 6K, maybe 4K. They're not doing nearly as much resolution, and remember what I showed you. If we go from 4K to 6K, we've doubled our resolution. We go from 6K to 8K, we've doubled it again. So we're doing 4 times the resolution for essentially half their file size. Now that's quite impressive, and it becomes even more impressive when you think about the flexibility of the system. That I'm grabbing just a DSMC brain, and this is actually my personal helium brain. It's right around 3.4 pounds, and as it's currently constructed, this is a paperweight, right? There's no I/O plate on the back, there's no lens mount on the front, and really, I'm not ready to shoot like this. But if I was to go ahead and grab a V-mount battery plate, put it on with 4 screws, now look at that. I'm ready to put my battery on. This is almost ready to go into my gimbal or something like that, but maybe you have gold mount batteries, so 4 screws, I swap that out, and I'm now able to put an interchangeable I/O plate on the back. Very, very flexible part of our DSMC2 system, and I'm going to go ahead and queue up a great modularity video, shows all of the flexibility of our modular system, and I'm going to go ahead and play that for you right now. Pretty impressive to see that camera go from a handheld small configuration to a full studio build. And really, that's the benefit of that modular system, right? We have several Super 35 options, a full frame option that also does Super 35. And if I go ahead and navigate back to my desktop here, I wanted to show you that if we come right back here to Filmtools website, you can see that currently Filmtools has all of the RED cameras and all of the current offerings here. You can essentially click on whatever camera brain you want, and really I like to come to something like this. Why? Because you're going to look at this and say, hey, that's one camera. No, I get to choose my sensor. It's essentially like choose your camera brain and then choose your sensors, or choose your film stock, very much like we would choose a film stock. Do I want the VV, the full frame? Do I want the Super 35, or maybe I want the Gemini because I wanted to use that dual sensitivity that only the Gemini sensor allows. And I'm all good at Zach at the moment, so thank you for this. But that's one of the other benefits of being on Filmtools' site. Maybe I'm not sure which configuration I want, what sensor works for me, and I can go ahead and start a chat with Zach, and I'm going to go ahead and mute him right now at the moment. And this is a great way where we could essentially start with a modular brain and maybe potentially build up some other accessories or look into some third-party accessories. You can do that right here on Filmtools. Now, maybe you don't want to tinker and you don't want to mess around. You just want to get a system that has everything you need, and that's why our DSMC2 kits are so popular. These are fully available at Filmtools in stock, and look at this. It's got the camera brain you want, it's got the I/O configuration you want, all with a screen, battery, one card, and it comes in a nice Pelican case. And if we get this order in the next couple hours here, it could potentially ship today and be at my home tomorrow, and I'd be that much ready to get back out on set, assuming I have a job that I'm cleared to go out and do. So that's really one of the benefits here. We've got the modular brain, we've got the kits, but you know what? I'm gonna go ahead and take it back to my camera in full here, and I just pointed out that I have modular brains to my right. That's a DSMC2 Gemini that I'm pointing at right now. But maybe we come from an on-set sticks world, or maybe I'm a rental house and I don't like matching and checking all of those I/O plates every time they come in. And that's where I'm going to grab my Ranger body here. Now, this is an all-in-one body, and yes, it is physically larger than the modular systems. But notice that if I grab this, there's no modules to check. It's either V-mount or gold mount on the back. All of the I/O is fixed in the configuration that you want, and essentially if I slap a battery on here, a couple of rosette handles on the front, throw this on my shoulder, I'm now ready to go in a nice ENG style configuration here. And part of that prep to set, I'm going to show you how we can build a preset towards the tail end of the stream. So essentially I don't have to touch this camera, that camera, and this module and the all-in-one camera. I'll make one preset, so we're essentially shooting the same frame rate with the same lens at the same sensor, and you're not going to have to do any kind of bait and swap on the colorist room because everything's going to come from that same sensor. Now, before I go ahead and do that, it often strikes the conversation of, do we go Ranger, do we go DSMC2, and it's often a versus where really it doesn't. Now, this is a perfect time to queue up a great tech tip that was from our in-house photo editor and creator in Clay Reed, and I'm going to go ahead and play that for you right now.
Hey, welcome back to Red Tech. Clay here, and today we're talking about our brand new updates to the RED Ranger camera system. It's now available with our Helium 8K and Gemini 5K sensors. That's right, we heard you, and not only are our award-winning sensors now available in the Ranger's high-end unibody design, but unlike our rental-only Ranger with Monstro 8K VV sensor, these two variations will be available for purchase directly through red.com or any of our authorized dealers. But that's not all I wanted to talk about. I also want to look at why you might want Ranger over our DSMC2 lineup, and frankly, why some of you might not. Ranger offers a lot. It's dialed in for the configurations used on your favorite films and television shows, but at a price and availability you have access to. Ranger's great for a techno crane or a dolly, but you might have a hard time flying this bad boy in your average gimbal. Okay. Let's quickly break down some of the major differences when comparing RED Ranger and the DSMC2 camera system. And we'll see who comes out ahead. The first obvious place to look is the size difference. So what does it matter if your camera is large or compact? A lot, actually. Say you need to fit the camera in a closed camera system like the shot over f1. The flexibility and modularity of the DSMC2 system obviously wins out here. But size also really matters when we talk about heat control. The Ranger's unibody design has a single larger fan that moves air in the camera more effectively and quietly. So if you're rolling super long dialogue takes and you value your relationship with the sound guy, having a fan that's 4 times less noisy, it definitely matters. I guess that makes it 1-to-1. So what about industry standards and complexity in prep? I'm looking at you, camera team. How do you power that Preston without built-in 3-pin ports? How are you going to mount all your accessories without space and the standard mounting points? Forget that. How are you going to maintain stability powering it all off a block battery if you don't have a 24-volt system? You can make it work, but you need a bunch of extra GAC and modules, and that's why Ranger ticks those boxes. These are the scenarios we designed Ranger around. That's another point for the big guy. But if you imagine now that you have to take all of that up to the top of a mountain and hike and follow an animal, an actor, or an athlete, forget that. I'll take my DSMC2 handheld setup 10 times out of 10. I guess that's tied up. With the DSMC2 system, you have the ability to adjust the sensor plane and back focus, increasing your configurability. But the Ranger's shim PL mount and fixed sensor, it gives you more stability. Ranger has simple and standardized integrated I/O, and the DSMC2 system allows you to adapt to the exact I/O configuration you need. We could go back and forth battling all day because in Ranger versus DSMC2, no one loses. Everyone wins. In Hammer versus Screwdriver, who wins? I guess it depends on if you have nails or screws. They're different tools and they were purpose-built to do different things. That's why we created the Red Ranger and the DSMC2 camera systems, because each tool has a job to do, and the question is, what's your next job? All right, thanks for tuning in. Hit subscribe if you want to know when the next Red Tech drops, and go shoot something.
All right, thanks so much, Clay. As you can see there, it's really not a versus. It's just a matter of what's your next shoot, and we've got an option for that'll work for all of you, and you don't have to make any discounted choices on your lenses or anything like that, because you essentially can have a sensor and a body that works for you. Now, I am going to go ahead and cue it up here so I can start showing you a couple of things on the camera here. So if anyone has any questions on any in-camera stuff, now would be a great time to start asking them in the comments section, and we'll go ahead and get those elevated back up to me here. Now, as I go ahead and I'm going to go ahead and switch it, so I'm in the upper left-hand corner, and you'll see my camera menus coming here live. And we should see that here shortly. And there I am in the upper left-hand corner, and you're looking at my Chameleon Aussie here live. And right now, I've got my camera set up for a nice 24p f5.6 180-degree shutter with 5600 Kelvin, and I'm shooting 8:1. Now, that's a great spot to be, especially if I'm delivering for that Netflix streaming show. But I want to make sure that this is something that I don't have to reinvent every single time, because as you saw at the beginning of the stream, I've got 4 cameras around me, and I don't want to set up 4 cameras or run the risk that one of them isn't on the proper look or the proper LUT or using the proper configuration. So check this out. I'm going to come over here, and I apologize, I have to turn my head slightly here so you guys can see and hear what I'm doing here. But I'm going to come over here and say Menu, Presets, and then this is where I come down here and I hit the Create. Now, normally I do this with the touchscreen and I type out an elaborate name, 8K, 24p, 56 Kelvin with a LUT, but I don't have the touchscreen so you guys can see the menus. So I'm going to keep my naming very simple, but I just wanted to give you that little bit of an explanation. So I'm going to come over here and hit Create. And then for this preset name, I told you I'm going to keep it real simple because I just have one finger and a scroll wheel. I'm going to do Z, and it'll make sense in a second. And I'm going to do FT for Filmtools. And this is going to be my 24p LUT. And I'm going to do version 4 because I've done a couple of these for the practice streams. So once I've done that, I'm going to come over here and click OK, and I've got my name. Now, my associate Jonathan Petz did a very good solitary series on how you could customize your presets, but really, I want this preset to be a global preset. Everything that's on my camera, all the buttons, all the looks. Why? Because I want to jam that in all the rest of the cameras and have them be the exact same. So I'm going to come down here, and I'm going to hit Display, All. Notice that the right side filled up with all of the parameters from the Display tab. Then I'm going to come up here to the Key, All. Look, All. Project, All. System, All. Once I've done that with all 5 tabs, I come over here and hit Create. Now, it does take a second or two, but essentially what you're going to see here is kind of like, think of like 2 Explorer windows on your desktop. One is the in-camera, the other's on the media. So really, if I wanted to take the brand new preset that we just created and you can see it right here. It's the Z Filmtools 24-4. All I have to do is come over here to this little arrow, move it over here onto the card. If I eject the card and then jam it into all my other cameras, that's a great way that I could essentially have a preset, keep it in one camera, or navigate and share it with all the rest. Now, if you don't own a RED camera and maybe you're an AC, or maybe you routinely rent cameras, this is also a step that you could save that preset on your desktop. So now when you come back on set, you're not necessarily having to reinvent the wheel and remember what we did last time. Really great stuff. Now, I know no one would do this, but let's just say we all took 5 to go to lunch, and that intern or that someone's nephew that wasn't supposed to be on set walked over to your camera and started changing your parameters. Now, hopefully no one would do that, but let's just say they did. They're going to change your frame rate. Maybe they come down here and change your resolution to some weird 3K widescreen because they want to go for an artsy look or more of a Super 16 look. I'm just kind of making these things up, but notice that I'm changing the look, and maybe I come in here and I want to do a cooler kind of a look, and you notice this is drastically different than the shot I was shooting just a second ago. Now we come back on set and I go, man, that's not the parameters we're supposed to be shooting. How do I get all of the presets back? How do I get back to that same starting point? Watch this. Menu, presets. I'm going to navigate down here, and this is a good time to point out, look how many presets I have. I have more presets than you would ever want to scroll through. I would say about maybe 5 to 10 is the max. No, 5 to 10 is practical. 20 is probably the max. If you put more than 20 on there, you can affect your boot up time. I definitely have more than enough on here, but really that's the one I want. I highlight it, I come down here and hit apply, and look what happens here. Give it a second or two. It's not quite instantaneous, but essentially you can watch this screen here as well as the other one as it comes back up. Notice it's getting me back to that same starting point of 24p, 5.6 on my aperture, and 180-degree shutter, all of the frame guides where I want it, and I don't have to guess which button does what. Why? Because this is my preset that I use every single day. So very, very time-saving tool, and it's definitely a way that we can essentially set our cameras up so when we do get back to shooting, we're all prepped and ready to go. Now I'm going to look over to my left and see if we've got any questions coming in on the chat. And really, guys, I'd love to open it up to any other chats, anything that we have here. Really notice that I have the ability to essentially, this is my side handle over here. If I did want to check my focus, I'm going to go ahead and touch my edge tool here, and you should see focus first and then edge. And now there should be no doubt where my focus is, and you're seeing my Panther Chameleon there, Aussie. And normally if I was doing this for an actual gig, I probably wouldn't do it in the screen cage, but notice there's no doubt to where my focus is. And if I move my little cursor here, and I'm doing it with just my side handle, notice that I can move this cursor and to wherever I want. I don't have to change the orientation of my camera, and I'm going to hit the one button right here to magnify in onto my Panther Chameleon there, and essentially you're going to see that one-to-one zoom. Now there should be no doubt of where your focus is because I can see, yep, I'm tack sharp, I'm right where I need to be. And a little pro tip, if I actually hit record now, I don't even have to magnify back out. By hitting record, I know I'm in focus, it'll pull me back out, I'm ready to go, and you might see a yellow tally in my upper right hand corner. When you're shooting animals or anything non-scripted, I like to live in pre-record. Why? Because I'm not really watching what's going on, but if I hear something or someone goes crazy in the chat, all I have to do is come down here and maybe flag a couple stills, flag a couple more, or you know what, commit to that clip, and now I didn't miss a beat because I had a 10-second pre-record or 3-second or 30-second, and really what that allows me to do is have a soft in trigger so I don't miss any point of the action. Really great time, a really great tool, and it doesn't have to be just for nature. It might just be, hey, I can't see when the talent walks around the corner, put it in pre-record, and now you don't necessarily have to wait and miss the beginning of the action or have a really long lead-in for that shot that we didn't quite need. All right. I'm looking to see if there's any questions coming in on the chat, and I'm not seeing a whole lot. It looks like my associates are doing a great job of answering them. I want to thank both Filmtools and RED for doing so. Johnny or Michael, if we got any questions, please feel free to send them up to me now. If not, I think this is a great time to take it back to my camera in full. And I want to thank everyone for tuning in, and just know that as we are getting ready to get back out there, maybe there is that one thing you need, or maybe you're not quite sure what it is and you really need to see it in person. Just know that as difficult as that is right now, do know that Filmtools has an option to shop by appointment. I would go ahead and either call them directly, or you can email them at sales@filmtools.com, and that's a great way that you could schedule an appointment and get in there and still be socially responsible and do your best social distancing. Great. Well, we're right around 30 minutes here, so I don't want to take anyone too much more time unless there's any other relevant questions. This has been a great session so far, and it looks like I think that all of the questions are being handled thus far. So this has been a great opportunity. I want to thank Filmtools for making this available. Please feel free to tune in and subscribe. We hope to have a lot more content coming out for you. And really, this has been a really great session. I want to thank everyone. Yep, and I'm seeing some more questions coming in. They're more general purchasing questions, and that's actually a great time to go back to my desktop here. And if you see right here on Filmtools, you guys may have heard the little boop boop in the middle of my stream. That was essentially one of their Zach support agents coming right here into the stream. They could answer the question. I can essentially decide if I want to get that Ranger Gemini in gold mount or V mount, and look at that. I can essentially get that order in, get it going here in the next couple of weeks, and essentially this would be eligible for free shipping and back out to my house here right when we're back ready to get back out on set. Great question. I want to take it back to my camera menus here. And notice that I am shooting in 8K. I did just create an 8K preset, and notice that if I come over here to my menu, presets, you can see that it's now on the card, right? This is in camera. And I apologize, I got to turn my head. I can't do it upside down and backwards. Notice the ones that I've highlighted now are on the card. Pro tip, I'm going to hit the 2 button, the 1 and the 2 button on the side of my SSD, and watch what happens there. I just ejected my mag. For any of you data wranglers or media managers, that's a great way to eject the mag and not have to worry about doing a hard record. And essentially, this is the vehicle that I then get to go over and jam into my Gemini camera, and I'm going to repeat the step that how you get it into camera. But great question. This is an 8K full frame camera. That camera is 5K Super 35. There's no magic preset spell that I can do to that camera to make it turn into 8K, but what it will do is it'll be 24p, 5.6, all of the same parameters that it can do, except it won't do 8K. But if everyone's at the same frame rate, the same shutter, and we're using Super 35 glass, I could just as easily put this Monstro into 6K or Super 35 mode, and really that way the preset could go across all the cameras. So maybe not 6K, because that one won't do 6K, but you get my point, right? It'll do all of the parameters up into the point where physically it can't grow the sensor. Great question. So I'm going to go ahead and insert a mag. Let's just pretend that this is a camera that I've never used before. I just booted this camera up. I'm going to go ahead and insert the mag. Watch what happens here. It kind of like when you insert a hard drive, it does have to scan through the whole drive here or the whole mag. I'm not quite sure if I put in a 1 terabyte or a 4 or the 512. And really, if it's taken a little bit longer, like it looks like it is, that's probably because I put in the 1 terabyte card. It does just take almost up to a minute or so sometimes to load that mag, just because it is such a large capacity mag. Now notice that it loaded, and let's pretend that this camera that I'm using does not have this new preset that we just created. All I have to do is come back over here. This is the one that we just created today, and I hit the little arrow, and look what the camera says. Hey, would you like me to apply that? I say yes, give it a second or so, and we shouldn't see too much change because I applied a preset that's already on, but you saw the process. It's pretty much drag and drop, and if you have the touchscreen, it is definitely drag and drop. I'm just doing it with the side handle here. Great question. All right, well, we're right at around 35 minutes. If anyone doesn't have any other questions in the comment section, I want to thank everyone for tuning in. This has been a great first Filmtools and RED prep to set. We hope to have many more, and really feel free to chat us, comment, shoot us an email at solitaryseries@red.com. We'd love to hear your feedback, and hopefully this is something that we can do in a future session, and we'd love to keep the content coming. So I'm going to go ahead and take it back to my camera in full, and wave goodbye to you guys and give you one last chance to answer any more questions. How much should I watch the other episodes? Great question. How much should I watch the other episodes? The Solitary series are going to be coming out weekly. Both Jonathan Petz and myself are going to be doing those weekly. We're keeping them right around 30 minutes or less. Honestly, you can subscribe to both Filmtools and RED, and that way you'll never miss one. I'd love to tell you that we have, many more in the queue, and that's what the case is. We're essentially going to try and roll them out once a week, and I don't have quite the crystal ball that says when we can all get out of our house and get back out there on set, but until then, we're going to be just like the rest of you, practicing our best social distancing and hopefully interacting and sharing some little pro tips for you here. I'm going to look over and give one more question. Nope, I'm just seeing a lot of thank yous, and I'm going to thank you as well. Let's go ahead and end the stream, and we're going to thank Filmtools and thank RED. And once again, if you did want to check out that shop by appointment, you can go ahead and give Filmtools a call or email sales@Filmtools. This is James Lucarelli from RED signing out, and you guys have a great rest of your day.